Hello, guys. Welcome to the Kajuna channel. As you see, we are here for the second debate of the trial of Wingard, originally hosted on the Black Screen podcast on the Blackaroni channel. Today, it will be hosted on my channel, and as of now, we're just waiting on Blackaroni to show up to catch anyone up on what we'll be discussing today. Essentially, it is just a round two of sorts for the GXK debates. As everyone knows, I am a big advocate for um, Godzilla Kong New Empire, as is a film I love um, a lot. And Blackaroonie, you could say, with all respects, is on the opposite side of that spectrum. He has gone on to criticize GXK in more ways than one. Um, and, we have our disagreements, and I love to talk about that. So we have these discussions, debates on, the merits of GXK. And I see Antonio, we're probably going to keep it to just a solo stream with me and Blackaroonie, as it is more of a debate between us, unless he might want to bring someone on later down the line. But we'll see. But for now, it's just going to be me and Blackaroonie, as far as I know. And so we're just waiting on him to show up. There we are. All right. So everyone, welcome to the stage. Blackaroonie.
Boo.
What's up?
Hold on. I can't hear anything. Hold on. Give me a second.
Alrighty.
All right. Problem solved. We're
You
back.
good?
Yep.
Awesome.
We
All
are
right.
back.
How you doing?
I'm alive.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like it.
Yep. Would a dead man be talking? I don't think so.
No, that would be illogical in the way the universe works. So that would be a plot hole.
Okay, now you're just saying stuff. Now you're
All
just
right.
saying stuff. Well, let's let's see what we got here. We got our debate number 2. We're doing a bit of a cross examination. Not just of GXK, but also your video, because there are many things that need
Mm-hmm.
to be said. But yeah, before we start, because this is your stream, you will be the one to establish the rules.
Okay. Yeah, so I was thinking about that since, as you said, we are doing this on my channel here. I would say we can very much play by the same rules you established. Um, I would say I want to sort of start off with like two starter questions that I came up with um, to sort of launch off into the whole cross examination part of this. Um, and just to sort of maybe break the ice leading into it. You cool with that?
Yep. Yep.
Alrighty. So let's see. When we started on your stream, we did like a 3 minute opener, was it?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'd say for these two questions, the first thing I want to ask is just to make it clear to the audience. What is what is your position or your thoughts on GXK and why? And then followed up with how do we feel looking back on the first debate now?
All right.
Um,
Do we get a timer or no?
uh, yeah, I can set a timer if you don't have one on your end.
No, I do. I'm
Uh,
just asking
okay, yeah.
like 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
I'd say 3 minutes is good.
Hmm. For each question or for the both of them?
For each question.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna set that up now. I'm gonna start answering my question in three, two, one. So my current stance on GXK, after having rewatched it today, it is an objectively horrendous film. It does absolutely nothing right. Even the most minuscule things that it should not have been able to mess up, it absolutely does mess up. I think it is a film that merely exists to scratch the itch people have of seeing giant monsters fight, and it can't even do that properly because the film it is ugly. It does not follow the 12 principles of animations correct the 12 principles of animation correctly. It breaks a lot of animation rules. It it violates mise en scène. It violates pretty much any filmic rule that you could come up with. It is a horrendously constructed film. I wouldn't even call it a construct because a construct would imply a coherence, and there is no coherence to that movie. I think that it is a movie that does not deserve to exist, and there is not a single defense that I have seen of this movie that can justify its existence. The only justification that one could levy in favor of the film is to either lower your standards or to just pretend it's what you wanted and see how you feel. Another defense that I ever heard is that if you expect the logic and coherency coming from this type of movie, then you are watching the movie wrong, which is just an absurd proposition. I also believe that this movie is downright indefensible. Um, and overall, this movie is an example of the fandom's demand for these kinds of horrendously made movies, as well as the supply provided by the Hollywood in creating these movies. This is just a perfect example of supply and demand. If the if GVK wasn't terribly maligned, if it was ousted as the terrible movie that it was, then GXK would not exist. So I not only blame GVK for the existence of GXK, but I also blame the fandom for its existence because it does not deserve it. We deserve movies of higher quality, especially Godzilla movies, and movies like GXK are precisely the reason why the general public does not take Godzilla seriously and why they only care about the giant monster fights because they were not provided with a better alternative, which is why I believe minus one was the antidote to that. It revolutionized how we perceive kaiju media because of its popularity and its success. So GXK is just a mutation of the spirit of GVK, and it is just as bad, if not worse, than GVK. But I still think it's GVK is objectively worse. But yeah, GXK, not a good movie. And 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 seconds. And that is the end of my 3 minutes for the first question. So just to
Hmm.
reiterate, what was the second question again?
The second question was, um, how do you feel about or what are any thoughts you have after the fact, looking back on the first debate now?
All right. I'm gonna start the timer in three, two, one. So my general thoughts. I think that besides the technical difficulties found in the stream, such as my audio not being as high as it should have been, as well as the interruptions behind the scenes. I also think that the debate was not as fruitful as I thought it was going to be. Most of the arguments presented were um, post hoc rationalizations, a lot, at least on your end. On my end, I think I provided a solid enough argument that the movie was just objectively bad. But my main point of contention, at least with myself, is the mere fact that I was focusing too much on one specific aspect of the movie, only covering like 2 to 5% of the entire thing, and I did not extensively dismantle the movie as I thought I should have. We had exactly 3 hours to do so, and that would have been more than enough time to completely dismantle the movie, but I kept engaging in the circular arguments that you presented, the circular
Mm,
arguments being the evidence, the things that happen in the film are evidence enough of the justification, which is not a really good argument to make in favor of something. The evidence that something happened, okay, what happens in a movie is not evidence that it makes sense. It just means that the movie is ignoring the fact that the events don't make sense. It would be like saying, "Oh, 1 plus 2 equals 4." Well, we know that 1 plus 2 does not equal 4, but we see that it equals 4, so it's fine. That's not how argumentation works. That's a very poor argument, and I believe that I gave way too much leeway as well
mm,
when it comes to argumentation. I gave in way too more leeway than I thought was necessary because, on top of the fact that I didn't want the debate to escalate, I also was trying to be very, very careful with my words. And I think that kind of hindered the points that I could have made against the movie, which there are plenty. There are hours upon hours of footage. I am a little bit disappointed that I wasn't as harsh towards the movie as I thought I could have been, but today I hope to remedy that. But yeah, no, the last debate, although it was somewhat successful, I still believe I could have done a much better job. But I also do believe that you could have done a much better job with the argumentation as well.
mm-hmm.
And overall, I do think that I did a good job in playing the scenes in the movies. I did a good job with that. At least that's just the technical stuff. But in terms of argumentation, I believe we both could have done a better job, but I still think I did a much better job because of the arguments made and how logical they were. And there,
Alrighty.
that's 3 minutes.
Awesome. All right. Let's see here. So I will just go over this.
May I ask you a
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, of course.
So, what did you do to prepare for this debate?
Well, I did go over a few of your videos. Mostly the what was it? Uh, I'm blanking on his name. Up from the depths video. I did go over that. Um, go over some of your arguments as well. I did watch a little bit of the first debate, and then I did watch GXK, a few of the vital scenes that I felt I had to focus on, as well as a bit of a rewatch in general, just to see if I can gather some more thoughts. And then I did write a few, uh, jot down a few notes containing some of the main points that I have for it.
Mhm. All right, all right. So,
Mm-hmm.
how do you want to proceed with this?
All right, cool. So then, first things first is I'm just gonna say my pieces, and then we will go into it.
All right. Sounds
Um,
good.
yeah. So then, let's see. I'm gonna start my 3 minute clock. I might not use up all 3 minutes since I just have this one basic thing to say, but let's see. So, my position, as anyone here knows, is that I love the film GVK, um, and this is due in part mostly because even though there are technical flaws that I could acknowledge with the film, in spite of that, there are still many aspects that adhere to my tastes in ways that override any technical flaws that I can see, both in part because I believe they are aspects that are done well, as well as just aspects that I enjoy merely for what they are. And hopefully, I can do my best to both explain and hopefully argue for those points. As I only seek to do as best as I can and do better each time. And then looking back on the first stream, I would say, I can see where you're coming from and how many of my arguments probably didn't stand. as well as they could have, and I'm just hoping that I can do better as well as I can. All right, and I'll stop myself there
Yeah, that's
for that.
1 minute 55 seconds left. If you want to say the other thing, then you can just use up the rest of that time, unless you need more.
No, I think I'm good with that, just to get the ball rolling. Since I've said many times how I feel about it and such. Um, so yeah, so we can get into, and I think we should get into just where you feel we should either either do like a small recap or where you just think we should just start off from last time.
I don't really have much of a structure planned. Mainly because since I'm the guest, I didn't
Uh,
want to do, any of the lifting. Um, I was hoping that if I returned the black screen, I would be the one to do that since it's my stream. I want to put
mm-hmm,
effort into that. But if you have like a structure planned on how we want to do about it, how you want to go about it, because my current gripe is the fact that a lot of your arguments are either post hoc or appeals to emotion, which is just to say that sometimes your feelings on the movie cloud your judgment at times. And so one of the rules that we had in the previous debate is that we were not going to use any subjective anything at all to really justify our claims, to justify our position. We were going to use the facts presented. And another thing too
mm-hmm,
is post hoc rationalization. You were retroactively justifying what was present in the movie, and not just doing that, but also presenting the events as though they were evidence itself, which is a form of a circular reasoning. Like imagine if I asked you, what flavor is this pie, and you told me it's pie flavor. That doesn't really tell me much, which is why you heard me many times saying, yeah, I know that's what happened. um and so that's mainly my main gripe with most of your argumentation, because a lot of it was
mm-hmm,
that. And a lot of it was also extra canonical material, things in the books, which will not be counted as defenses, mainly because the movies do not count them as part of their canon. And the reason for that is because mainly they do not pay attention to any of the events. Now, if I were to talk like you, if I were to defend these events like you would, what I would do is say we can see the events go play out as the book says that it does, and that's just saying that the movie plays out as it normally does. It just be saying, oh, the event happened, therefore that is the evidence. That's not good evidence. That's just circular reasoning. The event happened, therefore it must be true. That's not that's not a good defense. Mainly because there is no internal justification. The internal justification would be, say, for example, Bernie. Uh, Actually, no, I don't want to. I don't want to get into that rabbit hole again. Let's say, for example, Godzilla. Godzilla needs to power up. Why? Well, we see the films tells us that he needs to power up for Shimo and Scar King. Okay, I know that the film tells us that, but that's not really true, because right now he is powerful enough to defeat Kong. And if it weren't for his debacle with Kong, he would have also been able to defeat Mechagodzilla. Even though in the movies he has lost quite a lot and struggled quite a lot, he still comes out victorious regardless. And he is still pretty overpowered. So if he defeated them while he was still weaker, now that he's supercharged, even before the events of GXK, what exactly would he need the transformation for to evolve Godzilla for? And then at that point, you run into a brick wall, because there is no internal justification. The only justification you could come up with is, oh, it's the meta. Because what do you mean? What do you mean by the meta? Oh, simple. They need a new toy. They need a new design for us for the movie to sell the toys, and it worked. It clearly worked because everybody bought the toys. So yeah, they're which is unfortunate. I like to believe that Godzilla is more than just uh, a mascot for you to buy toys for, but it seems that people just want to buy the toys for I guess to have them in their I don't collect a lot of merchandise from any movies. I just enjoy the actual movies. If they're good enough anyway. But even then, like I only have like one piece of merchandise, which is that a Lego Batmobile from the Batman when it came out. But that's mainly because I just wanted to play with the Legos, and I actually, tried
Mm.
playing with them and try to do some stop motion stuff with them. But to each their own, I guess that's just. But back to the original argument, yeah, no, the only reason why Godzilla evolved can be justified in its own existence is with meta, which has nothing to do with the quality of the movie. So it cannot be used as a defense. So that's just one example of how one would go about arguing that position and how I would have argued the way you would have. And that's my explanation as to why that kind of argument that you would make are not good arguments.
Yeah, yeah. So I can see that in the way you're presenting that specific side of it. Um, but also just knowing that personally for me, that's not an argument I would make. Um, I do have a different stance on the reasoning for Godzilla's evolution, um, in regards to how it's used in the film and as to the reason why he did that. If you want to go into that, I can present it. Um,
Before
my
you
argument,
do,
at least.
before you do,
Mm-hmm.
um, did you at least make sure that there is evidence presented by the movie that is not post hoc?
I would believe so because I feel that the evidence. I feel like the evidence shows through in a specific way, to where it's not merely just this happened, so therefore, or because of this, this must be true, kind of thing.
Like this happens, therefore it must be true. How would you quantify that? How would you prove it that your evidence is not post hoc rationalization?
Because of both details that are said in the film as well as shown.
That's that sounds like, but that's begging the question because it assumes that the details presented in the film are coherent. That's the thing in question here. How do you know that they're coherent?
Hmm. Because what is both presented and said on film matches what we see play out in the events of the story.
That sounds kind of you said the same thing twice.
Hmm. Well, then, let's see. Well, let's see. May I present what I have, and then you're more than free to point out any flaws in it
Sure.
as much as you like.
Yeah.
All right, so just going off of the reason as to why Godzilla evolves. My stance has always been the reason Godzilla evolves in this film is to better combat Shimo's abilities, as she was previously a threat that Godzilla could only ever imprison as he was in his previous
That
stages.
that is presented by the movie. That doesn't sound like something you came up with. That sounds like something the movie did. Because that's exactly what the Eileen says. He's charging up for battle, and that's what Trapper confirms. Oh, World War III. And but we've already established that he doesn't need to do that because at the point at which he is now, he is more than capable enough of combating Shimo and Scar King on his own because of the power
I would,
scaling established as far back as King of the Monsters.
I would have to disagree, mostly because in terms of the, I guess, power scaling we've seen, the only state Godzilla could reasonably beat Shimo at is the thermonuclear one, and that was a very specific scenario in which he had to be powered up externally by someone else, and then it's only a state he could reach by preparing for something, and it's not a state he can enter without severe risk or without a serious amount of a long amount of time.
But even if that were true, why is it necessary that he needs to transform to defeat Shimo? Because that would imply that he's not strong enough, which you know that he clearly is.
Because the point of the evolution is to better sustain a form that can combat Shimo's abilities.
But why can the form combat Shimo's abilities instead of just him on his own at his base form, which we know that he can?
Godzilla's evolved state specifically is better adapted to using his energy to generate a large amount of heat to combat Shimo's ice abilities.
But he doesn't use his for one, he doesn't use his atomic breath to combat Shimo's ice abilities because we don't even see them beam clash. That's one thing. Another thing too is why can't his base form do that?
His base form cannot generate the amount of heat necessary to counteract her freezing abilities. The only thing that would is his thermonuclear mode, which again is a state he can only reach through external means rather than just entering it, in like a Super Saiyan mode, just doing it from sheer will.
With
He
Mothra,
needs it.
right? Yeah, with Mothra's help, which is someone that is present in the fight. So why, even if that were true, which I don't believe that it is inherently necessary that he would need to do that, because there is like, why is that even the case? My next question would then become, why, why doesn't he at the very least try to go thermonuclear? Because Mothra's right there. And this is
Hmm.
supposed to be
So
like the real Mothra, according to Adam Wingard. Which, I mean, she looks more powerful. I don't know if she is, but if she is more powerful, then surely she can, give Godzilla a boost.
yeah, the main reason Mothra was needed for um, for Godzilla's thermonuclear mode is essentially to, as far as we know, in both what was stated by I think the director, as well as implied, is basically to stop him from dying. Because as it was stated in King of the Monsters, he was going to like explode, and implied that that would like kill him. And in this film, in GXK, we see that as he builds up his energy gradually rather than all at once, as it was in 2019, he is entering what is the energized state, which I believe um, as is the natural progression into his thermonuclear mode. And to better sustain that power, he then goes on to evolve and change his body to better sustain it.
But how is it that his atomic breath on his own is not enough to counter Shimo? Because he barely uses it against her. He mainly just uses melee attacks. Anyway, so like
Uh,
if he wanted to use his power against her, surely that would have been the evidence. Like, oh, he keeps spamming his atomic breath to warm her up, and to counter her ice powers. But in the movie, he barely uses he only uses his atomic breath with Scar King. He doesn't use it with Shimo.
he
So
does use it. He does use his, technically speaking, he does use the atomic breath twice on Shimo. She is able to tank both beams. One of the main assets of the power is that he's able to generate an immense amount of heat, which we see that when Shimo freezes Godzilla, he uses the heat generated from his body to break out rather than any other ability.
but he does something similar with Tiamat when he gets encased, and even though it's not as cold as her ice beam, it's still it's still a method that he used to free himself. So he could have done the same thing with his atomic breath. And plus, he was in the Arctic anyway, so which is again not as cold as Shimo's ice breath, but surely that would have been also a hindrance as well, given that lizards are cold blooded and Godzilla's a lizard. So
Hmm. Um, well, in that specific case with Tiamat, he didn't really do anything other than use his atomic breath to cut up Tiamat,
Right.
and then also that's his energized state, so he is better equipped to being in that environment
And
due to the amount
and
of heat generating off of him.
and also another thing too is uh he before the events of GXK, right at the end of GVK, he was still strong enough to, like throughout the entirety of GVK, he was powerful enough to spam his atomic breath over and over again. And at this specific state in GXK, he's also strong enough to spam his atomic breath. Also, I'm rewatching the scene right now. Mothra disorients Shimo, and uh, Godzilla breaks free with sheer power, like his sheer like strength. He didn't use his atomic breath, and he's much slimmer now. So that has the energy has nothing to do with it. It was just his sheer physical power.
If you look back at the scene, the way he breaks out is that he generates heat from it. You can see the steam and the um ice melting off of him before he breaks out.
I'm rewatching the scene right now. Mothra flies in, uh, blinds Shimo temporarily. Yeah, his atomic breath, the thing in the dorsal plates charged. The dorsal plates charged, and then he breaks out using sheer physical strength. You think that the atomic breath, as it is normally, wouldn't have been able to do that? Because in we know for a fact that the dorsal plates are strong enough to pierce through Godzilla hide, and so if they are able to pierce through Godzilla hide, and they're hot enough to, they're hot enough to steam, then just the normal atomic breath, then how would this be any different?
Well, he very well could have used the atomic breath. It's just a matter of in that instance he decided to just use his normal heat up, um, like his new heat up ability, to break out of the ice in that moment.
This isn't a new heat up ability. He's just charging his dorsal plates to slightly heat it up more to break out, which he could have done in his base form. Which is my whole point. He didn't need that new transformation. Like he could have been able to win the fight without it. My whole point, because again, you're doing exactly the thing I said was not a good argument. You're saying essentially what the movie is telling you is the case, and retroactively justifying it using the explanations that the movie would give, which I mean you would need the movie as evidence, but also you would have to use common sense as well. What would be the common sense conclusion to the idea that Godzilla is strong enough to spam his atomic breath willy-nilly without any repercussions or loss of energy? So clearly he is much more powerful than he would have been in, at the very beginning of King of the Monsters or at the very end of 2014. Um and so my whole argument is that he does not need it. And the evidence is the fact that he can spam his atomic breath as often as he does, which he does do at the very beginning of GXK before the power up. And if he was much weaker when he defeated Shimo and Scar King, if he was much weaker, now that he's much stronger, how much more easy would it be for him to defeat Godzilla? I mean, well, how easy would it be for him to defeat Shimo and Scar King? Like they should be a cakewalk for him. And even with his evolved form, he pretty much cakewalk over them like infinitely faster, which I mean for the purposes of preventing destruction, fair, but he still perpetuates the destruction, so it kind of becomes moot at that point. But that is ultimately my point, that he doesn't need the transformation at all. It's just a waste of time, and it only exists to give Godzilla something to do because they slapped his name on the title.
Hmm. Okay, let me think. Let me see here. But is that like your only piece of evidence that he can spam the beam, therefore he's should be just as strong or already strong enough?
That and just the physical strength he exerted against Kong, which was defeated by Shimo. So by power scaling logic, Godzilla wouldn't necessarily be strong enough. And that's just assuming that Kong also got stronger over time in between GVK and GXK. And in well, actually, no, that doesn't count. Never mind. Um, but yeah, those two are the pieces of evidence: the fact that he defeated Kong and GVK, and the fact that he can spam his atomic breath. Because now he has more energy to spam than he would have had near the beginning of King of the Monsters or throughout 2014. In 2014 he barely uses his atomic breath. He only uses it twice. In King of the Monsters he uses it a lot more often, but not that often. He still uses mostly melee attacks. He tries not to use his atomic breath way too much, which, I mean, for the purposes of the conservation of energy, I think that's pretty good. One of the few good things that King of the Monsters does. I say few because I'm being very charitable to that movie, even though it doesn't deserve it. But yeah, that would be my evidence.
But none of those abilities are specifically effective against Shimo's.
Yes, it is. I mean, we it would have been if he had used them, but he decided not to use them. He only used melee attacks, which, if your argument is that he needed the energy, well, he didn't use it. He just used melee attacks.
But he does uses it though, both in the instance to break out of the ice, he hits her with the atomic breath
We've already
um,
established that with
twice.
the atomic breath, he could have used his normal atomic breath to to do the exact same thing. Which, so that's not a unique ability of his new purple evolved atomic breath. I'm gonna skip through the let me see. When does Godzilla show up? So Godzilla breaks through the ice. Let me see if I can speed up the footage. Where do I speed up the footage? Aspect ratio, crop, video track, full screen, sets wallpaper, zoom. Okay, he tackles her through buildings. Um, his tail wipes through several buildings. Shimo pushes him. Uh, let's see. Shimo attacks Kong. Let's see. I'm trying to speed up the footage. Shimo is about to attack Kong, but Godzilla tackles her. Shimo throws him. Godzilla gets back up on his feet. Scar King throws a building at Kong. No, that's not. That's not. That's nothing to do with Godzilla. Shimo grabs and slams Kongs against a building with her teeth. Drags him through several houses, committing several hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of property damage and several hundreds of thousands of casualties. She's about to fire her ice breath at Kong. She fires her ice breath. Godzilla powers his atomic breath and does not fire at Shimo, but fires at Scar King instead. He jumps out of the way. He grabbed the crystal. He throws Scar King using the whip. He breaks the whip. The crystal falls off. Scar King crawls after it. Shimo is still firing at Kong, and Godzilla continues to fire at Scar King. And he keeps firing at Scar King. He keeps firing at Scar King, committing several. I don't know. Killing many people. He fires at Scar King again, while Kong is still being fired at by Shimo. And this is like the only time Godzilla fires at Shimo. and then he decides to continue with the melee attack. So he only uses his atomic breath once, and he decides to continue his melee attack. And then they struggle in the background while Suko destroys the crystal. So Godzilla only uses it the one time, and then he stops using it. I mean, at least he uses it twice, but he uses it the one time against Shimo, and it does just about the same amount of damage that his normal atomic breath would have done. So yeah, you'd think he'd spam it more, but no. He doesn't even use it to cool her down. He just uses it to get Kong off of her. And now that the crystal is destroyed, there's no reason for him to attack Shimo anymore. So he focuses his attack on Scar King. So he doesn't even. And even then, like if you really think about it, if he knows about the crystal, which I don't know that he does, but if he does, then clearly he'd go after the crystal first, and he wouldn't even need to use his new powers to subdue Shimo anyway. So, like if he wanted to kill her, he wouldn't need the transformation. If he wanted to free her, he also did not need the new transformation. No matter how you slice it, the transformation is unnecessary.
Hmm. All right. Well, then let's see. Let's just put a pin on that because I don't have any other counter responses that I have at the moment. Um, I mean, I think I've said all I can. So
Not to be mean, but honestly, I don't
there's that.
think that's not. I don't think that could be even defended, even if one tried. I don't think that's an entire. That's a. I don't think that's a defensible thing. I don't think it's a defensible aspect of the movie. I don't think anything in the movie is defensible, to be honest. But we can move to like something completely different. I don't want to spend too much time on this, like we did last time with Bernie
All
and
right,
the.
for sure. Yeah. So we'll just put a pin on that. Um, and then let's see. Let's move on to the next thing, which I will say. Let's start with the your reaction to my response video, and just start with like what did you see wrong with it, and we'll proceed from there.
So, it has the exact same problems as in the debate. It has the exact same problems as you demonstrated in this debate so far. But also, there was a point that you made that you were trying to dismantle that I didn't even make. Let me see if I find it because I know you there. I know there was something that you said that I know that I did not say. Um, Let me see. It was near the end, and it had something to do with Scar King. I know it had something to do with Scar King. In defense of Suko and Scar King. Could you recap what's in the in the actual video? I don't mean to stay silent and just listen to the whole point. I don't want to keep the chat. I don't want to keep
Uh,
anybody disengaged.
just recap like my video or
Yeah.
recap. Yeah. So my video was essentially responding specifically to your critiques against Suko's character in the film as well as Scar King's. And I guess just to go over my main points. So my main point with Suko is that um, his story is still well written and isn't invalidated by the fact that Kong um, uh, beat Zuko in the fight where they first initially met when he bludgeons all the other apes. Because you can still have that and continue the story of Zuko learning to trust Kong.
How?
Because it shows that because the point of the story is for him to learn to trust Kong.
I know what the point of the story is, but I'm talking about the mechanics. I don't really care about the themes. The theme, I already know what the themes are. The thing in question is the coherency of how the themes are established.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. So it's coherent in that we gradually see um, how Suko reacts to Kong's actions as they go on their journey,
Uh,
and each
let
step.
me stop you right there. So you're using post hoc again. You're saying that we can see that, we know that we can see that, but the actual thing happening is not evidence itself. So try again.
Let me see here. Let's see. Let's see. All right. So the issue is I'm using post hoc, is what you're saying, right?
Yes, that's a fallacy.
Uh huh. And then what that is basically, let's see, mistaking that correlation, or the mistake that let's see, or correlation does not equal causation, right?
That's not what post hoc is. I've been saying what post hoc is for the past almost hour, and I've said what it was in the stream as well. You're retroactively trying to justify the events by presenting them as if they make sense, when in reality the coherence that you're basically presupposing that the events themselves are logical, which is why you're using them as a defense. But my argument is that they're not logical, but you're presenting them as though they are, and describing them as if the description of the events is the justification itself.
Then what makes it illogical again? What makes it illogical?
The thing with Suko specifically.
Yeah, in this case.
So basically, what makes the growth, quote unquote, of Suko illogical is the fact that he gains trust in a way that victims like him would not be able to, because because we are led to assume that Kong will not hurt Suko, but their first interaction was of him hurting Suko. Now it doesn't matter if Suko hurt him first. It doesn't matter that Kong was just defending himself. What matters is how they interact, and what would lead Suko to want to trust him. Now, Suko would know from his perspective, everything that Suko would know about Kong would be, this guy is taking me from my kingdom and forcing me to betray my kingdom, and keeping me as a prisoner, feeding me. If Kong let Suko die, then he couldn't have arrived to the layer of the Hollow Earth, so he would need to keep him alive. So yeah, makes sense why he would feed his prisoner, right? Makes sense why he would free his hostage. Why he would feed his hostage. Sorry. Um, and then we see Kong uh acting kind towards one of the apes. Well, how do we know that? How do we know that Suko is just as kind? Well, we could have a scene where one of the slaves is, looking sympathetically at Suko, and Suko's like trying to, get his attention back to work, but to keep him safe, right? So his surrogate, basically, we have that scene, right? But we don't know the surrogate or their relationship. We don't know why they care about each other. We don't know why these two have a connection. We just know that they do, and we're just supposed to accept that they do instead of seeing any proper establishment, because we know that this person is going to die. We know that this surrogate of Suko is going to die. Um, but and at that point, the movie's being cheap with its emotional anchor with Suko. Um, another another thing too is that the way the guy dies is also illogical, because it requires a major continuity error for that to work. There is no lava pit when they first meet, and because there is no lava pit, the story, and therefore no method for Scar King to kill um him immediately in a way that prevents Kong from stopping him. The universe has to bend its own rules and create a lava pit specifically for this one guy to die, and that's exactly what happened. And then once the function of the lava pit is served, once the guy dies, then it immediately disappears between shots. So it requires a major continuity error, cheap emotionality, as well as as well as the just the vague illusion that, or at least the ghost of the idea that um Stuko would want to betray Scar King. But for all we know, Suko's an opportunist. For all we know, Suko might just want to be around Scar King because, oh, if he feeds him, right? But we don't know anything about Suko beyond just, oh, he's Scar King's slave and he betrayed the Scar King in favor of Kong because Kong fed him as though he wouldn't have been fed in the Scar King's domain. Or Kong doesn't immediately go after him to hit him even though he did the very first time they met. So what's to say that he wouldn't do it again? And then the counter argument to that would be, well, what about the scene where with the drowned viper? Oh, that scene. So I found a new continuity error with the drowned viper. So I don't know if you have the movie pulled up, but I do. So I'm going to direct your attention to, let's see, 52. Yeah, no, 52. No, 51. All right, 51:45. So the the axe is right in front of Suko, right? And the drowned viper head is to his right. So Kong arrives and he reaches for the axe. Now the axe is right in front of both of them. So naturally, Suko would flinch. That makes sense. But then his hand goes past Suko in the direction of the head of the drowned viper. And the idea is that he gets the axe, but the axe is nowhere near him. So the axe just teleports to his side, and then the drowned viper head remains next to Suko. So they messed up a very simple thing, which was super easy to do. It was super easy establishment. It would have been simple and it would have gotten the point across and it would have been fine. It would have been enough of a justification to say, oh, well, fine. That it makes sense that Suko would no longer fear Kong because he doesn't actively try and hurt him anymore. It was just self defense. And it's just like a no hard feelings kind of thing. But no, they messed that up too with another continuity error that did not even need to be there. Like they messed up something that was so impossible to mess up just to get the same exact result that they would have gotten if they. So it's almost as if they went out of their way to be illogical and just ignore basic cause and effect and just general geography and just object permanence for that to achieve the exact same goal that they would have achieved if they just let events play out normally, like just him just grabbing the X, something so minuscule and simple. And they, I don't even know, like, and this was today. I found this out today. I have no idea how they messed that up. That should not have been possible.
So,
It's not a
so what?
plot hole, but it damages the entire character. It, well, not the entire character arc, but it damages that specific moment. At least from a technical point.
So you're saying what did you say was out of place or was in the wrong place in those scenes?
Not that it was in the wrong place. They they moved the uh, they moved the axe away from the front and to his side, but Kong grabs far beyond where the axe would have been. So he doesn't even grab anything at all. He just drives his hand through Suko's field of view, and to present the idea that Suko is flinching because he thinks Kong would hurt him. This is a character moment, and it's meant to establish that that Suko is afraid of Kong. But that wasn't necessary. That was to achieve that same idea. They just could have just let the events play out as they themselves established it. It's almost as if they lack confidence in their own character. It's a very small thing, but it speaks volumes to their it speaks volumes of what their philosophy was and how secure they were in their own visual storytelling, which was very little, which was very little confidence, because they also feel the need to spell things out for the audience as well, using the murals and yeah.
Hmm. Because I'm looking at the scene now, I'm not seeing anywhere where that happens.
Look carefully. Look more carefully. The axe is physically in front of them both, right? It's a case of object permanence. The axe is in front of them both. Now, exactly at 5150, Kong drives his hand to Suko's right, almost as if to reach the drowned viper head, which is where it is. But the axe in 5154 is to his right now. And the drowned viper head, and even Suko is like positioned weirdly as well. Like he's not even where he was originally. So the axe is to his right now, even though it would have been in front of him and he would have been picking it up from the front, and Suko would have been behind that, and then the drowned viper would have been to his right. So it's yeah. And then it
Hmm.
shifts back to how it was before then. So I don't even know if this is just the CGI problem or a framing problem, or because the or just a scale problem. I couldn't even pinpoint this problem if I tried. I couldn't do it if I tried. I don't even know what to call this kind of problem.
Hmm. I would say it was just a problem of moving the assets and where the characters are positioned. Because I do know that the drowned viper's head moves from scene to scene. Um,
Yeah, but they didn't need to do that. That's the thing. That was not necessary. I couldn't even tell you if it was intentional or not. Part of me believes that it is, because they wanted to convey the idea that Suko was scared of Kong, which fair enough. It makes sense that he would be. There's no reason why he shouldn't be. It makes sense. But they somehow made the thing that made sense not make sense with basic cause and effect and um object permanence. It's almost
hmm.
as if they just move on their own to convey the exact same idea that would have been conveyed if they just had it normally. Like that was completely unnecessary. And if in a much better movie, this would just be a nitpick. But because this movie is how it is, yeah.
Hmm.
So it's like the same problem. It's not as bad as it's not as bad as the lava pit appearing and disappearing specifically to push Suzuko's character, but this scene also is used to push Suzuko's character. So it's just that it pushes it in different ways, and the magnitude of the character, quote unquote, development is much larger with the scene with the lava pit than in here. So I can understand why people would think that this is just a minor thing, but it's still something that deserves to be called out, because again, in a much better movie, this would be like something that wouldn't even go through your mind. It wouldn't even be that big of a problem in a much better movie, but this isn't a better movie. So
Hmm. No, I can definitely get that. And yeah, because I definitely do agree with you in that, in lots of cases, the environments and then the assets within the environment are changed to a lot of degrees. Um, like off the top of my head, like the lava pit one is one. Um, and then there's the whole issue of the sinkhole that leads into the subterranean realm. does seemingly change from when we first saw it to when they come back out of it. Um, and
I
I would
couldn't
also argue
bother.
that
Yeah,
it's
I couldn't bother
intentional.
with the sinkhole because on top of the fact that I'm very bad with geography, the geography itself, like there's no sense of positioning of geography. There's no good enough sense of that in the Hollow Earth because everything just looks the same. It kind of has the same problem as Namek does in Dragon Ball, but even then, like even with Namek, you can tell that there's like a north, south, east, west kind of, but yeah, it has a similar problem to Namek because it all looks the same.
Yeah, because like
Like there's no
I think
variation
they
of
are.
biomes or anything. The closest thing we get to a variation of biome is the lake where the drowned viper is, but even then, there's probably hundreds of those across the Hollow Earth, and the Scar King's lair. That's like the only difference in biome, at least what you would call a difference in terrain. But other than that, it all looks the same.
Yeah, I can definitely see that because for the most part, what you get in GXK is like mostly jungles, outside of mountain ranges and open valley fields. Um, in some ways, I do like it better in GVK because there's more sense of that differentiating, difference, different biomes essentially. We see that a little more in
There's more
GVK.
like rocky terrain in GVK, so I can't believe I'm giving credit to GVK, but I will grant GVK this infinitesimally small. I hate that word. Infinitesimally small bit of credit. Where credit is due. There's like a rocky biome. Um, at what I like to call Mount Sinai, because that's essentially what it is. It's Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, other than that, like everything looks the same.
hmm Um. Yeah. So there's that whole issue.
Yeah, but I think I explained the whole issues with Scar King and Suko, specifically Suko,
Yeah.
in my video. I think I already explained it. I don't really intend to repeat myself. So
Okay. And then I don't want to backtrack anything. But and then my argument specifically for Scar King was the only thing I defended for Scar King was why people were really attracted to his personality.
oh
My
yes,
point being
that's what
that
it was. I remember now.
yeah.
Sorry, I remember what it was now. So you were arguing against my point as if I said that Scar King didn't have a personality, when my argument was that the fact that he had a personality at all is not an inherently unique idea. That was my argument. Like because
I
Up from the depths was saying that, oh, Scar King has a personality as a point of praise. Like villains are supposed to have a personality. That's not a point of praise. That's just like basic writing 101. So that's why I kept saying, oh, the Mutos love each other and they also want to propagate. That's both a person being loving towards each other is a personality. Being
hmm
evil, at least for the skull crawlers and Ghidorah, those are personalities. But quantitatively, Ghidorah had more personalities because you had three distinct heads with three distinct personalities, I guess. You got the aggressive one, you got the leader, the one that was like determined and trying to steadfast, and then you got the curious one with Kevin. Those are personalities. And then, we got the extension of Kevin through Mechagodzilla, and or at least that's the implication. It could have been also just the aggressive one. We don't know. But it doesn't really matter. Yeah, we got the extension of Ghidorah via Mechagodzilla, who also wants to destroy everything for some reason. But yeah, his personality is being evil, being malevolent, being destructive, for its own sake. The Skull Crawlers, evil, right? And
Well, actually, with that, I would say the skull crawlers are like they're like the embodiment of like gluttony.
gluttony.
Yeah, because that's the whole point is that they eat. You know.
You could say that about literally every animal that eats.
Yeah, but like with these guys, like they're like how would you describe them? Almost like an invasive species type thing.
So
And
why
like I
aren't the
think,
mutos considered gluttonous by that logic? Because they're constantly munching on radioactive material. I mean, you could say that,
uh,
oh, it's for the purpose of giving birth to the muto eggs. Sure, but the male muto doesn't need to get the muto queen, female muto pregnant because she's born pregnant, which is weird, but let's roll with it. Um, so he just eats it for his own, and then just gives his share to the muto, the female muto.
mm-hmm.
He eats some, and then I think he eats some. I don't remember actually. I actually know what. No, he gives it to the queen, I guess. Actually, no. Never mind. Okay, never mind. The mutos are not. Okay, fair enough. Never mind then. Let me just backtrack. Godzilla in GXK. Oh, well, that doesn't count either. Um, Gluttonous. You don't think that's given the lore of the skull crawlers? You don't think that it they're gluttonous
well,
on, like, for the
well,
purpose of harming Kong specifically, because they seem to be like Kong's natural predator ancestor, not ancestor, but like natural predator.
hmm, maybe, but like, because one other thing I'm taking from that is that in the lore, I remember, hearing something that like the skull crawlers are like constantly hungry because of their high metabolism, which is
Well, I
why
mean, if
they're
it's high
like
metabolism, that's not
ravenous, maybe ravenous.
being having a high eating a lot because of a high metabolism is not a personality trait. It's a biological quirk. I'm not entirely opposed to the idea that they might be gluttonous, but that is an explanation. I mean, that's just. I mean, they look anorexic, so maybe there is some precedent to it. I'd have to look at Skull Island more closely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little bit skeptical. I'm not entirely opposed to the idea, however, so we'll see.
Okay,
But
all right.
saying that it could be due to their metabolism, I wouldn't count that as gluttony, especially if they need it to survive and they, burn a lot of calories with their activities. So, but well, I don't
Okay,
know. But
all right.
my whole point that you misunderstood in the video was saying that you were saying it as though I said that Scar King has no personality, when I never said that. I know that he does have a personality, but saying that he doesn't have that he does have a personality, I don't count that as a point of praise, because that's just every villain, or at least how every villain should be anyway. That's just like you're praising what the movie should have done as a foundation for its writing. That's like the lowest possible praise you could give the movie. The movie achieved basic writing. It almost sounds condescending towards the genre itself, because you expect it so little that the very fact that you got it at all in a movie is enough of a point of praise. It's almost condescending how Up from the Depth frames it, which is why I mentioned that the fact that his had a personality at all wasn't unique to Scar King, which is why I listed the other villains.
Yeah, I see that, and well, for one, I apologize if it made it seem like I was either like misrepresenting you, because that was not my intention. My intention was entirely on the fact that because my takeaway was not that was your criticism. Like, my only takeaway was presenting the reason as to why I think Scar King's personality was seen as a point of praise, because it was still unique from the others, um, in the way that
It,
it's very human-like in its portrayal.
that's another thing too. You sound a lot like how Adam Wingard described Scar King, which he had. I don't know what it was that I don't remember exactly what it was that he said, but I do remember what he said was just a bit of
He's
a word salad. I know that it was a
he
word
said
salad.
that he said well his thing was he said that Scar King embodies everything bad about humanity, or
But
the worst parts of humanity.
he predates humanity.
He said he was the Joker or something. I don't know. No, but no, like, well,
Wingard, please, Wingard, I'm begging you, please stop
well, I
talking.
mean, if the Iwi are as old as they are, then they might not predate humanity.
He,
Or,
I don't, he might predate humanity. I might be just
or
assuming that he could predate humanity. I don't know, but he caused the first ice age, and the ice age happened before humanity's ascent to.
wait, did you say the first or the last?
There was only one ice age, so the first would still be the last. At least to my knowledge, I don't know how many. I'm assuming that there was only one ice age. I actually don't know much about. Let
Uh,
me see. Was there only ever one ice age? Let me look it up. Was there only one I- ice age?
the AI tells me there have been at least 5 major ice age throughout Earth's history.
Ah, five. I did not know that there were five. Five. Okay. All right. All right. So fair enough. Fair enough. Then Scar King might not have predated humanity. Um. Fair enough. Even still, his the thing that Adam Wingard said in regards to, I know that Braden mentioned it in one of my black screen episodes, specifically on GXK. I was having a bad day that day, so I was not putting in too much effort into the video. I mean the stream. So that stream is probably among my weakest ones. It should have been my strongest one because of how much I hate that movie. But
For which one?
my GXK stream,
Uh,
it's called The Doom That Came to the Monsterverse, I think it was.
I see. Yeah.
Um, and so I know that Braden said something that uh, Adam Wingard said in regards to Skark regarding he has the decision to do the things he does that are bad. I think that's how he said it. Which just sounded like just again diarrhea of the mouth. It just sounded like he was just saying words without really knowing what those words mean. Um,
Mm.
something about so I don't I don't really get what he was saying with that Wingard. Like, is he saying that he has an active personality and the personality is inclined towards evil, therefore that's scary? Which, I mean, again, that's most villains, at least most good villains. I don't see how that's how how, how that's
Mm.
exactly unique.
well, well, my own takeaway that I described in the video was that um, Ghidorah would not kill Mothra to get Godzilla angry or provoke a reaction, whereas
But
Scar King does to Kong.
but he did kill Mothra.
Yeah, and it was only due in part um, as a defense, because Mothra got in the way of the gravity beams.
Oh no, no,
Um,
no, no. I remember that. That is not what happened. What happened was Mothra flew into Ghidorah to try and
yeah,
attack Ghidorah, and Ghidorah specifically attacked her. He didn't get in the
yeah,
way of the gravity beam. He actively chose to target her specifically.
yeah, but it was a defense move. It wasn't done out of like a malicious intent to make Godzilla angry, where that's what Scar King did to provoke Kong and killing Gnarled Finger,
Why would that matter?
because it shows the personality that I'm describing.
So it it's true because it proves your position.
Essentially, I would say, because we
that
see it on
presupposes that
screen.
the position that presupposes that the position itself is coherent. Like you're assuming that that's a
Well,
presupposition.
if the director says this is how we portrayed him, and we see that portrayal on screen, is that not coherent to the intentions they had?
That's precisely everything that I've been saying up until this point. Just because a director says something and it happens on screen does not make it coherent. I've been saying this forever now. Like that is another a post hoc. You're assuming that the direct you're going backwards to justify what he's saying, but at the same time you're also using the word, which is also an appeal to authority. You're using what he is saying and explaining how he would say it as if it were true. When we all know that Ghidorah is evil and malicious. He actively attacks humans. He actively attacks Godzilla. He actively attacks Mothra. He actively attacks Rodan, and he's actively going after what's her face, Emma Russell. So how is one evil more is one how is one evil greater than another? I would argue that Ghidorah is much more evil because he managed to destroy most of the world with his alpha call the other times. Because he actually managed to succeed somewhat, kind of, sort of.
Well,
Not
my point
entirely, but
isn't. Yeah, yeah. Well, my point isn't that one evil is better than the other. My point is that one evil is different from the other, and the difference is what is given praise because it's still unique from all the other evils we've seen.
what makes it unique? Because they're both
Because it's
intending on doing it.
yeah,
If
but the
the
difference again is that all of the other threats of evil are still grounded in that animalistic sense of animalistic intelligence, which makes sense for them. With Scar King, not even just given the context of him being a great ape, but as displayed in his personality, it is distinctly human-like in that sense. As again, what I've stated that Ghidorah would not kill Mothra maliciously to rile up Godzilla in the same way Scar King did to rile up Kong. And we see that, again, I still think this is a valid form of proof because we see in the film, whenever he does this stuff, he has this malicious smile that indicates he's taking pleasure in what he's doing,
so you
which is
think a
also distinctly
villain
human like.
so you think that if Ghidorah were to smile, you think that would be enough for it to be considered malice?
Yeah.
You don't think that the actions themselves speak enough?
No, because the actions themselves are coherent in that they are all basic animalistic responses. Whereas Scar King
But
has
Scar
responses that
King,
are inherently human like and give credence to the fact that his personality is more human like.
this is a case of Wingard anthropomorphizing the monster. So you're essentially saying that if if Ghidorah wouldn't have smiled, it wouldn't have given credence to the idea that he was purposefully just being malicious. When we see Ghidorah going out of his way to attack the military, which by the way cannot hurt him, they cannot hurt him, but he goes out of his way to kill them. What about Emma Russell? Well, she has the orca. Now that could be enough of a thing, to attract him, to distract him, but he didn't have to because she's not a threat. He could have just he could have just followed the orca and just, stomped on it if he wanted to stomp on it and just, move out of the way until Godzilla showed up. But he was actively intimidating Emma Russell. He didn't need to do that. If Do you think that if he smiled about it, it would have given credence to his malice?
Well, sure, it could have, but even then, you're saying there's still reason behind it. He sees the orca as essentially another animal who's
Yes,
giving
but he
off
goes after
another
the
alpha
orca.
call.
But he goes after the orca. Once the orca is out of the picture, he stays there to intimidate Emma Russell. He didn't need to do that, but he
Was
chose to anyway. Why?
was the orca still going off at that point, or was
I
it
don't believe.
destroyed in the crash?
I don't believe so. I don't believe it was. But I'm going to double check just in case because I'm pretty sure that it stopped emitting sound because the whole purpose was to distract Ghidorah away from the osprey.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Should be around here. Bow, bow, bow,
Mm-hmm.
bow,
So let's see. While you check on that, Um,
Nobody's talking in chat. That's weird.
in chat, well, let's see. Antonio did have a question for you, Blackaroni. Do you think Shimo can beat King Ghidorah?
No, no,
Hmm?
I don't. I don't.
You
No,
don't?
no. Although that has nothing to do with the debate. So
But in the canon, it says Shimo froze Ghidorah. So,
sure, whatever.
mm-hmm.
Let me see. Uh, let's see.
Yeah.
157. Okay, let me see. So Ghidorah's looming over her. Ghidorah's attacking her ineffectively with the
Gravity
gravity
beams.
beams. Like I don't know how he misses, honestly, but sure. It doesn't really change anything. So uh Van is flipped over. The orca is quiet. It's destroyed. It's destroyed. So he shouldn't care about this thing anymore, but he clearly sees Emma. Very clearly sees Emma, and he's intimidating her, looming in front of her, growling. Long live the king, she says. And he stays there until he senses Godzilla. So he didn't need to stay there. Like, it was a short time, but he could have redirected his attention to Godzilla, which would have been sensed regardless. But he just stays there. You don't think that's an indicator of his malice?
Mm,
You don't think actions speak louder than just a sign right in your face that says this guy is evil?
well, it's not also, in regards to Scar King, it's not just a sign, it's also actions. His actions match his reactions to them and show his intent. I think with Ghidorah, and that's it, I think there's still enough, because there's not that much amount of time that passes before Ghidorah redirects his attention to Godzilla coming in. And at that point, he had Godzilla beaten down on the ground, so all his attention is given to the last thing that had a signal, which was Emma.
Right, but he didn't have to do anything about it because she wasn't a threat. And besides, Godzilla was already walking towards Ghidorah, and he was getting pretty close. So he could have sent. I know we know for a fact that he could have sensed him, but he chose to keep his attention until the very last second. Now, there's not like there's anything that he could have done about it because he would have been killed anyway. It's not like the But the point is that this whole situation is an indicator of his malice. So you don't think that Ghidorah's actions would have been enough to suggest that he is being malicious? Like
Hmm.
if he smiled while he intimidated Emma Russell, do you think that it would have given credence to the fact that he was actively being malicious?
I think it definitely would have gone a step further to, clearly indicate to the audience that this is a malicious act.
And you don't think
Which what?
everything he does up until this point is also malicious because he's destroying the world and reshaping it to his own design? You don't think that's also malicious,
Yeah,
the
but
purposeful destruction of
it's
life?
contextualized in an animalistic grounding.
Just
He's
because it's
doing it
animalistic
because,
doesn't mean it's malicious. Doesn't mean it's not malicious. I mean, because some animals can be real jerks. They can be real assholes sometimes. I mean, just look at
oh
dolphins.
sure, but in that sense, it's all more so, still grounded in those animalistic instincts.
Vic, do you know what dolphins do in their free time?
Oh yeah, I watched. What is it? What's his name? Uh, something like what? I'm forgetting his name. Do you watch those videos of that guy who does like those animal videos?
There's several guys who do
Yeah,
animal videos. You're gonna have to be more specific.
I forget his name.
I mean, okay,
But
well, that's not important. I know what you. I
yeah,
know
not
we
important. But
both yeah.
I do know about dolphins and their shenanigans and stuff.
Even if it's animalistic, that doesn't make it less immoral. Like you wouldn't drink from a you wouldn't drink from toilet water just because an animal does it.
No,
So
I would
like
not do that.
so like malice is not unique to humanity. So the fact that Scar King
Mm.
does it and he with a smile on his face, that just tells me that the movie is anthropomorphizing his malice. It doesn't tell me that he's actually, because I already knew that he was a malicious villain. I already knew that the film was basically screaming at me, telling me he's the bad guy, just yelling at me. So the smile just kind of, yeah, it just anthropomorphizes what was already there, which kind of ruins the sense of realism because, well, anthropomorphizing, like I mean, apes don't smile like that. So they it's not that they don't smile, but they don't smile like that. So
Yeah, sure.
this is just
And then so
anthropomorphizing.
yeah, but I believe that anthropomorphizing goes in hand into displaying that side of him.
The anthropomorphization, the anthropomorphic. I don't know what to call it. The fact that he needs to be anthropomorphized at all shows very little confidence in the visual storytelling. It's almost as if it's almost a sign that says this guy is evil, as opposed to just letting the actions speak for themselves,
And
which
then
they
you're
already
saying that,
do. They already do speak for themselves, so it just makes it redundant.
well, I would just call that icing on the cake then.
Of course you would. Um okay. Okay. So hmm, why is it icing on the cake?
Because it adds a sort of unique flavor, to continue the analogy, to this character, which helps, add that sense of uniqueness to separate him from the others that have come before.
How do you quantify flavor? How do you quantify that? That
Quantify
sounds kind of
it
that
in
sounds
the
kind of
large reaction.
subjective. That sounds kind of subjective. The thing we said we weren't going to do.
Okay. Well, objectively, would you say it's an addition to his character?
I would say it's a flanderization of his character,
Okay.
like an exaggeration, a needless exaggeration, and also just a lack of confidence in the visual storytelling. I think Kong Skull Island did it much better because Kong reacted how a primate would. His face moved. His face moved how a primate would. Like he acted how a primate would. Like he reacted how it, and one characterized the way he is. It adds it helps make it look all the more realistic, which is the point. And it really does help, especially in a universe like this, which realism is very front and center.
Hmm. I will say that I think in that sense, in terms of the realism, there is some leeway that can be given to the anthropomorphizing, especially in regards to Kong and Scar King, because again, they're not just apes, and that's something that all directors have said at this point, or at the very least, I know for the first Kong Skull Island, he wasn't described as just a gorilla. He wanted to be elevated into something more. Um, I believe his framing was more of a god than anything, but I think
A king.
by consequence,
Yeah, they refer to Kong as a king. Like Kong is the king of like King Kong, like someone that had to earn the title of king and protector. And Godzilla is more of
yeah,
a god, or at least he's supposed to be. But
yeah.
some
Although,
god, am I right?
yeah, though in the movie, yeah. Well, Mark also does describe Kong as Hank Marlowe. Sorry, describes Kong as god of the island, and I think the director's words were in that very same vein of they didn't want him to be just a gorilla, they want him to be more of a god. I might be paraphrasing a little there, but those
That's
words I
good.
believe were said.
That's good, but that doesn't necessarily have to come at the cost of the realism that they were going for. And I'd argue that for Skull Island, it doesn't. It actually implements it really well because like it's almost as if like what godhood and realism are mutually exclusive. No, no, they're not. I mean, just look at Dune, or
Yeah.
I don't know, just any religion ever. Well, any religion. Well, not any religion ever. That's but just I don't know. Just look at Dune. That's the best example I got. Or Berserk.
Mm-hmm. Well, are you saying that for you, giving the monster these exaggerated or flanderized um, parts of their personality, does that break the realism of it? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because animals, or at least titans in this way, have not been established to, you know, be able to move and contort their faces the way they do, or react as humanly as they do, like with human proportions and human like movements and that kind of stuff. It's almost like a cartoon. And Up from the Depth describes it as a cartoon, which is both condescending but also kind of true in the worst possible way, which is also a break in continuity because the MonsterVerse was never supposed to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and when I say Flanderized, I mean specifically the archetype of the tyrant. It's a Flanderization of the tyrant because it simplifies it to the point where it's impossible to like uh, explore any nuances. Um, and it makes it simple, kind of like how you would explain slavery to a child. So that's what I mean by Flanderization. It's a
Hmm.
watering down of the tyrant archetype.
I suppose I can definitely understand a part of that.
Hmm. And everything brought up until this point, those are flaws. Those are major flaws. They bring down the quality of the movie significantly. Everything from the stream, from every stream we've ever had to now, those are all flaws that significantly bring the movie down to a negative score. If I were to give it a score, it brings it down to negatives.
Mm. Okay. Let's see. And then let's see. Was there anything else about my video in particular? Because
That
I
was
must.
it. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was it. Just the most of the points were things that um were already explained in the video, in mine as well as in other streams. Like they 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 were in sufficient material to debunk the claims because a lot of the things you were saying were things you've said already that were just descriptions of the plot, as if the plot basically presupposing that the plot itself was coherent enough to be used as evidence, which it's not. But yeah, and just the whole misinterpretation of my points, like the idea that Scar King the whole thing about Scar King's personality. Like it's not that it's bad that he's evil. It's just that it's not unique. You know, not that it's a bad thing that it's unique, but sure, there is a blueprint for these kinds of things, and it could have worked well with the narrative if the narrative locked in. I mean, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. You know, Proxima
Mhm.
Caesar, perfect example of how you do it correctly.
Yeah, I'll agree to that.
And that's
Alrighty.
another thing. How under what precedent do you agree with the flaws that might be in the movie?
Um. Well, I agree. It's a flaw that.
Like in
Um.
general, like general flaws, like the flaws that we've presented.
What were my thoughts on the flaws presented?
No, like uh under what but how do you how do I formulate this question? Why do you agree? Because you do you agree because you don't know what else to say in regard as a defense, or do you agree because you recognize that these flaws bring down the quality of the movie, if at all?
Let's see. I will say that there are definitely a mix of those different reasons as to why there are some things I agree. Well, I want to say that I was specifically referring to you saying that like Proximus Caesar was a better example of what Scar King was trying to do. Um, and I agree with it in that sense because yes, I do acknowledge that a lot of the um, a lot of the writing behind Scar King is um, subpar to Proximus Caesar in terms of what they were trying to do with the character. I think Proximus Caesar is a better example of that, like a tyrannical characterization. Um, and then I would say, yeah, there's a lot of things where here I will admit to where I don't have, or I don't believe I can present a good counter argument to your points. Um, so in that sense, I would say I'm agreeing to saying that I don't have any good points to add, um, or like agreeing to disagree in that sense. Um, but yeah, that's what I would say. It's a little bit of a mix between those things.
Okay. What about like the movie in general? Like, do you still think it's defensible?
Um, let's see. I would say I can definitely only ever defend this objectively, which I know that's not like what we're here for. In terms of the objective qualities, I would say I believe I could do better, um, or at least that I can try to do better. Um, if I try to boil my arguments down, but if I can't find anything that I think would be a good enough point to present to you, that I would just have to like agree that it can be a flaw, and subjectively I can say whether or not I think that flaw brings down the movie for me personally. Which I'll say at this point, like the flaws presented don't bring down the movie for me because I can still take away a subjective enjoyment of the film for what it is. Um,
Yeah, but we're
but
here to talk about the objective quality, whether it brings
yeah,
it.
yeah, and
um,
that's what I'm saying. Like objectively, I don't have any good objective ways to argument or to present the argument. So I'm just like conceding to the fact that I don't have a good counterpoint, essentially.
so the ultimate verdict about this movie would be what? At least excluding emotion. We don't want appeals to emotion. What would be the verdict? The ultimate verdict.
Uh, in the case of what we presented so far, and also the grand scope of the film, there are lots of technical flaws, down to whether it be the writing or the, I guess we'll call it staging of um, either events or environments. So there's lots of flaws with it.
Right. I'm pretty sure there's a word for that as well.
Uh, let's see. That's a bad film.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. That's what we're achieving. We done it. That's the ultimate verdict. The movie's bad. Well, I am happy that uh, you could admit to it because I honestly do not think this film is defensible. It's not even. It has absolutely nothing to do with your ability to defend it. There is nobody. I just don't think anyone can defend it. There's not a single person alive on this planet that can defend this movie. There's not a single good defense to give to this movie that could make it better than it is. It just doesn't exist. And trust me, I've tried to find it just for sinister purposes, for my own self-destructive pleasure. But trust me, there is not a single defense for this movie, and it's evidenced by the fact that nobody's talking about it anymore. It seems to be only us. Nobody's talking about this movie anymore. What do you think that is?
It probably was just because it was a film that came and went, mostly due in part to a lot of people probably acknowledging the poor qualities of the film. Um, you know, and
Yeah,
then
my
that's just
theory.
speaking objectively,
Yeah, my
I would
theory
say.
is that people subconsciously knew that this film was bad, and they just got tired of trying to defend it by just saying, "Oh, it's slop, so it's supposed to be slop, so therefore it has a merit to exist." That argument slowly started to be weeded out. But there are some people that still persist. There are some people that still, continue to praise these movies, which these people are wrong for praising it. Um, they can like for praising it, like saying it's a good movie because it's not. And just most MonsterVerse movies, just the only two good pieces of MonsterVerse media are Kong Skull Island and 2014, and even 2014 is contested right now, um, because I've heard arguments against 2014 that I found very difficult to reconcile emotionally. Like I honestly, I'm starting to question the quality of 2014, and that kind of makes me upset because I really like 2014. So the idea of Godzilla 2014 being bad, it's upsetting because of my emotional attachment to that movie. But I mean, I'm never going to stop loving it, but it's going to be really heartbreaking if I find out that yeah, no, the plot is incoherent. But so and
Have you
it
had
would
a?
also go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Have you had a recent rewatch of it? Like just sitting down to watch it?
No, I'm waiting for Braden for whenever he
All
wants
right,
to,
right.
give it a proper deep dive. Um, but like whenever he wants to, like whenever he wants to watch it, and just give it a proper deep dive, then I will, in a heartbeat. But until then, I'm just gonna wait for his call.
I see.
I
That's
I
fair.
I admire him mainly because he's just a lot more stricter with movies. He's a lot more he's a lot I don't know how to put it, but he's a lot less lenient. He's a lot more strict, more, you know, precise with his arguments, with his argumentation. It's an immaculate precision in terms of argument. I've seen it in the King of the Monsters debate. I saw firsthand just how good of a debater he is, and just how good he is at arguing his points. And in his server as well, I just saw how good he was at doing it. I admire that man a lot. So we'll see. We'll see what he does with 2014. I'm probably not gonna make a debate of 2014 because I want to see firsthand the kinds of arguments that he presents, or if they are even defensible. But we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, no. If that's everything there is to say about GXK, because I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know why it has taken so long for people in general, both in our circle and every other circle, to like realize that the movie was bad, because we realized it from day one. So even before the movie came out, that we knew that there was no possible way it could have been good, and lo and behold, we were right. So like I don't know why it has taken me so long, and it has taken everyone so long to like come to that realization. And it was a little frustrating, and I will admit, with you in particular, Vic, it was a really frustrating because I mean, I am aware that you say that you have lower standards for storytelling, but as a writer, you would naturally have to raise your standards a little bit more if you want your work to be good. On top of the fact that the argumentation, it kind of just became this back and forth of post hoc, of appeals to emotion, of constantly, disclaiming that, oh yeah, no, this is subjective, but I like this movie and I also think it's good. It came at the cost of constantly, going back and forth with this movie, and I really don't want to talk about this movie anymore. But because I value truth quite a bit. I thought it was necessary to do something like this. I thought it was really necessary, and I thought this would be like the. I don't like that it took a duology. Honestly, I would have preferred a trilogy, but I'm honestly happy that I don't have to talk about this movie ever again because I
Mm.
hate it. And yeah, I'm honestly happy that we finally got to that agreement that this movie's just objectively bad, and we can finally put this movie behind us. Um, so
Yeah, there is one other thing that I wanted to discuss a little bit, just because it was a point in your video that you did talk about, and that is about the. Let me see if I can find it. It's about like your points against um what Up from the Depths said about the action in the movie.
Specifically, what?
Like his, you reiterated that his points were that the action was like clear, concise, and confident.
Yeah, I didn't understand that point of praise. I just felt like the just scraping at the bottom of the barrel. Like I don't know what he meant by that. To be honest, it just came across as him just saying compliments that don't really mean much. Just like a just verbal noise coming out of his mouth hole.
Well,
I like
I could tell you
I
what.
saw I saw the movie. I know what I know what how the monsters were moving. I'm not exactly sure like how I don't think because my main argument is the visuals being clear. That's just the visual part of the audio visual medium of film. That's not. I'm not impressed by the fact that I can see the movie. Concise. I mean, I don't. Does he mean like structurally concise, or does he mean like the actual movements? Because the actual movements, I mean, they're not moving how giant monsters would move, so it wouldn't be concise in that regard. In terms of scale, they're not moving as how they normally would if they were of that size and of that weight. How about but in regards to their fights, would they fight like that the way they do? Probably. I don't know, but maybe. But again, audio visual part specifically. That's all of film. And then there's a confident. I'm not sure what he means by confident. I mean, it's been. I don't. When it comes to visual storytelling specifically, like if he's not talking about the fights and just talking about the visual storytelling, we know for a fact that it's not confident. We've already established that already with the the way certain character beats go about. We've already established that with how the universe will literally bend just so the plot can happen. And they'll also have exposition dumps with the murals to explain what we're seeing. So yeah, it's not if it's confident in the sense that it decides to show the fight during the day, fine. But also, if you're talking about the storytelling, then no, it absolutely is not confident. So I don't know. I don't know why he brings that up, given those facts.
Well, I could tell you what I would have said, as opposed to the way he described it, which I don't think lends enough credence to what he was trying to mean. Yeah,
But
yeah. So like I would have said the action in the film has well executed choreographed fight scenes in tandem with um, well executed camera movements that elevate the shots as they appear on screen.
how?
How?
Yeah.
Um, they use a lot of well, they're able to implement standard um, techniques very well, such as like the 180 rule when it comes to shooting, and as pretty much any scene, but also especially with fight scenes, in order to have that clear and I guess clear and concise choreography that he was trying to say. Over here, the reason being is that it's able to follow very simple cinematography rules and techniques, both with the that 180 rule and then using the dynamic camera movements to show the movement of the monsters. Um, so that's how it does it, as I would say how it's able to do that.
And then my question would then be beside beyond the fact that monsters would not move like that, they would not be shot like that. Why is that a good thing? Why is it good that they do that?
Because it lends well to the style of um, to the visual style they were going for in the film with the monsters, and them shooting them more in just an overall stylistic approach, as opposed to how would you really shoot these monsters, which is something that's done. That aspect is done very well in films, in like 2014, which is probably the most cited example of that. Whereas here, you know, one thing. is that people say it's
No,
too cartoonish and such, but I
no,
see
no.
that
In
as a compliment.
2014, don't, we'll come back to that. But 2014 does not do that at all. The 2014 does not do that in the slightest. It does not cartoonishify the visuals at all. It tries to be as
No, that's
realistic as grounded as
no,
possible.
no. That's what I'm saying. 2014 is a good example of having the how would you shoot the monsters in real life and how they move in real life.
So it's like the example of the opposite.
Yeah.
So why is this stylistic choice a good thing? Because we know for a fact that the films have a very clear and distinct, at least from 2014, the even I guess King of the Monsters, although King of the Monsters is less visually appealing. But why is that change in style a good thing? Because it not only makes no sense for the world as we know it by the end of King of the Monsters, given the fact that the world literally ended, which is something that you didn't really answer in our debate. But also, why is it a good thing specifically for this universe as a whole? That is a good thing, just in general, just beyond just the world building. The world building is also a part of it, but also just in general, why is it a good thing?
I would say it's a good thing because it offers a different it offers a different let's see, how do I want to word this specifically? It offers something different. I would say it's just a different style of filmmaking um, that can be appreciated by the people who enjoy that specific um, aspect of like kaiju media in general.
Right, but why is it inherently good that it's different?
Um, it's inherently good, I think, solely because it offers a different visual than what's
No,
come
but that's what I'm
before.
asking. But that's what I'm asking.
Well, if I had to give a really, let's see, if I had to give it like a really objective standpoint on why it's good, um, hmm, I don't know if I can give that answer at this point because I can only just say
Yeah.
I can only just
Ex-
say it just offers that
yeah,
different
at that point
taste
you're
in
yeah, at that point
filmmaking.
you get stuck in a wall. You run into a wall if you go by that logic. So the answer that I would give is simple. It's not necessarily bad, but because this film series is not supposed to be about that kind of thing, because 2014 and King of the Monsters and Skull Island established a specific tone, a specific uh um visual style, and because of how it was marketed as, um then this kind of tonal shift does not make sense, especially given the world building, especially given how the plot plays out specifically by the end of King of the Monsters, because the world is doomed. Now the King of the Monsters says, "Oh, the Titans restore wildlife." That is just blatantly wrong. That's just not how radiation works. So that's the film like lying about radiation and how it works, and it also flies in the face. Sorry, it flies in the face against the thematics of Godzilla as in a meta sense. Now you could establish this specific Godzilla as its own unique thing, as its own unique version of Godzilla. Fair enough, but then Michael Dougherty, in the spirit of wanting Godzilla to be like the old days, Michael Dougherty decided to change the design of Godzilla to his more traditional design, specifically with the dorsal plates, which flies in the face of what Gareth Edwards wanted Godzilla to be like specifically for this universe. So, if we're going to do both, if we're going to do both, then the films following up after King of the Monsters would have to follow up on the events of King of the Monsters, aka the literal end of the world. And so that tonal shift goes against what an end of the world story, a post apocalyptic story, would be like, because it necessarily has to ignore all those things so that all the other silly stuff can happen. It necessarily has to ignore it. Otherwise, it'll create a tonal conflict. And at that point, you're stuck trying to please everyone, and you can't please everyone.
Hmm.
Like you
Okay.
have to commit to. If you present an idea, you should commit to it because 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 if you present the idea, then it'll remain there until you decide to address it. It'll remain there until you decide to give it a proper conclusion. Like if you begin something as a storyteller, you would have to end that story, but they don't end it. They just abruptly pause it and just discontinue it because they just wanted to have their GVK, they wanted to have their GXK for no other reason than it just would have been cool, which is irresponsible as a writer. It's incredibly irresponsible and disrespectful to the worlds that the world that Gareth Edwards and Vought Roberts and even Michael Dougherty. He's not a good director, but at least he tried to be coherent. Uh, it's a it's a slap in the face to what they were trying to do. Although Michael Dougherty was also partly responsible for how the MonsterVerse turned out because he was involved in the production of GVK. I don't know how much involvement he had in GXK, but I know that he was heavily involved in GVK. So yeah, Gareth Edwards and Vought Roberts, Jordan Vought Roberts. It's a slap in the face to them and what they were trying to do. It's about narrative integrity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say I can definitely understand that point of view. Um, from an objective sense, that I would say, yeah, tonally, the films steered farther and farther away from like what the original intent of, I guess, the universe was supposed to be from that first movie in 2014.
Yeah, you can't just destroy the world and then say, "Let's look at this monster fight now that happens because, well, history. It happened in history, so it must happen again because money." You can't just do that. Like, if you wanted to have the GVK, you could not have ended King of the Monsters the way you did
Mm.
because that would necessarily require a tone that uh would be useful in addressing the aftermath of King of the Monsters.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's why the style is not a good the stylistic change is not good. Like if in Pacific Rim, at the very least, it would make a lot more sense because that's the kind of universe that it would make a lot more sense in a universe like Pacific Rim or maybe even Gamera if you wanted to be like super charitable. But this isn't any of those.
Mm-hmm. But like, would you still say that like in a vacuum, like if you just had GVK, GXK with the styles they have, like, would you still say it's bad?
The movies, absolutely, but at that point, it would have nothing to do with the world breaking being destroyed. Because at that point, if GVK and JSK existed on their own with no prior films, there would be no build there would be no world building to break. So they would still be
Yeah.
bad, but at that point,
Yeah.
they would be
But like
not more
specifically for
forgivable.
the,
They wouldn't be
huh?
more forgivable, but they wouldn't be as infuriating, at least to me.
Yeah. But in the sense of like specifically, the style of the monster fights, or the action,
They
would you
would
say
still be
it's
yeah, they would still be ugly, but it wouldn't break any continuity.
okay? All right. Because yeah, because I would say like, because on its own, I would still say it's good for the reasons I stated it was, like in how it's staged, choreographed, and shot. I
But you
think
still
they
haven't
all.
proven that, though. You still haven't proven that. So you would you still hold to a position that cannot be proven, that is internally
Well, I can
incoherent?
prove. Well, the only proof I need to support that, um, is just watching the fight, because that's the only way you can prove it. Because I can
But that would
just watching
presuppose
one
that they're
fight.
internally coherent, though. That would immediately presuppose, because you're operating under the presupposition that your conclusion is correct. So you're essentially saying, my conclusion is correct and it is proved by the conclusion.
I would have to disagree because the only way I came to that conclusion was because I watched the film, and then I watched the film again with the mindset of, does it follow this rule of shooting a fight? And then I found that it did. So therefore, it follows the rules. So it's good cinematography. It's good. It's good
What is the
staging.
rule? But what is the
The
rule?
180 rule is basically you shoot a scene um, from one side, only shooting different angles of that same side, so like a 180 degree, um, which is done so that you have clear and concise scenes on screen.
Is that it? That's the point of praise you're giving it?
Well, yeah, it's a point of praise. Yeah,
That
if
is
it
that
if,
is
if it didn't follow the rule, you would say it was bad.
but
It does follow the rule, so I say it's good shooting.
but that's just one, that's just for one, that's just the one scene, and for two,
Well,
again,
no,
that's
it's
all
for
of
all the
film.
scenes.
That's all of film. Again, that's like all of film. I'm not saying that it's on top of the fact that you wouldn't shoot giant monsters this way, which is a completely separate issue. That's all of film. Like you can't just say the camera worked during shooting and I can see what's going on and there's no glitches, therefore it's good. That's just the baseline.
Well, that would be like more good because like if I shoot a film and I say, because objectively, like you have to say, yeah, it's a good shot film. But in this
Like
case, it's mostly just down to what
if a film was just a blank screen, would you say the film was not shot properly?
if they were trying to shoot a film about a blank wall, then yeah, you would have to say it's shot well. You know, because I think intention matters. If they were trying to film The Hobbit and all we saw was a blank screen, then that's a bad film. You know.
If the screen was just pitch black for 2 hours, that that would be bad. That would be shooting the film bad.
Yeah,
Which like,
because the yeah, because
but you don't see the problem with that argumentation, that kind of argument, because
well, what is the problem?
because of course it is. We already agree that it is.
Yeah,
But the point of that argument, the point of that is to say that film is an audio-visual medium. I would naturally expect to be able to tell what's going on. That's not a that's the baseline. That's like the bare minimum. You can't
but then
praise a movie for doing exactly what it. You can't praise a movie for doing the bare minimum, because you would expect it. You would expect a film to be visible. That's like saying
what
a human. That's like saying the human body is working correctly because you're breathing. Well, how do you know? Are you breathing correctly? No, he's just breathing. Okay. Like, yeah, I would expect a human that is alive to be breathing. That's kind of normal, I guess. Like, is he breathing correctly though? No, he's just breathing. Oh, that's you see the problem. You starting to see the
I can
problem.
see the problem, but to me, you have to boil it down to that, because all I'm saying is that it this aspect is done well, which
And
would
I'm s-
then
eh,
which would
and
be a
I'm saying
defense.
I'm saying that's the bare. That's like the that almost sounds desperate, because only someone who's desperate and trying to defend the movie would defend of the camera working, or the camera doing a thing and doing it how it is supposed to be doing it. You know, it doesn't even go above and beyond. It just does exactly what a camera should do. And a shot. Oh, this is a 180 shot. How does it do it? By moving in 180 degrees. Like, yeah, okay, and like that that is the definition of a participation trophy.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that the film shouldn't do it, but what I am saying is that it's a thing that films do in general. Like all of film across all of time, like ever since film has existed, dynamic shots have existed. Now, innovations have happened over the course of several years. I'm not gonna because film in the early stages of film, like it wouldn't be fair to say, oh, it didn't do a 180 shot, therefore the camera work is bad. No, they were still innovating. They still didn't know that they could, and even if they wanted to, they couldn't because the technology was not available at the time. But now that you can, it's pretty much expected because the technology would allow for free camera for the camera to move as freely as you want, to the point where you don't even need to use real cameras. You can use simulated environments with CGI. That's not a point of praise. That's just the status quo. Like, would you praise a movie for following the status quo?
Praise, I would say, is to. I would still ultimately say it's good that it did that. You know, it followed the rules, and if it did it well, sure, it can be a point of praise.
Wow.
Because I mean, if you're asking for a point of praise, I'll say, the action is well shot. You know, but if it wasn't, and if you have any points to say it wasn't, then it's a point of criticism.
The only criticism against I have against the cinematography is the fact that it's not shot how you would shoot giant monsters. That's it. I'm not saying that the film has terrible camera work. I don't think the film has terrible camera work. It has the kind of camera work you would expect from an action movie. But the problem is that it's the kind of camera work you would expect from an action movie from the perspective from human relations, like physical human relations, like human proportions is what I mean. It operates under human proportions instead of giant monster proportions, which makes the scale significantly less, which is the problem. The problem isn't that it's shot badly, it's that it's shot um in a way that does not that it's shot in a way that you wouldn't shoot a, a movie of this genre. Like this cinematography does not, specifically with the monster scenes, they don't fit the genre.
I'll say that I'm gonna say that I think that is a point that I think boils down to personal taste. And I would say I see it both here and across the board when it comes to whenever you bring up how should a giant monster movie be shot. And I say that because it's clear from the in, that the it's clear that the intention of the movie was to shoot it that way.
But the intentions go against the world building, it goes against the established tone, it goes against the story, it goes against what Gareth Edwards and Vought Roberts wanted to do. You basically have to ignore those movies for you to achieve that, which goes in hand with my problems with the tone as well. It cannot be a point of subjective it cannot be a point of subjective preference. And on top of that,
Mm-hmm.
and even if it was, the tone of Pacific Rim was much lighter, and yet it shot monsters and monster action the same way in 2014. And no, and so what's the excuse for that? Because it has nothing to, because surely if that's the case, then that kind of cinematography transcends tone. It goes beyond tone. I also think it's Pacific Rim, because of the aspect ratio, it doesn't do the same thing Gareth Edwards did, where the monsters barely fit the actual frame. I think it's good that it does that because it helps juxtapose well the size difference, and also the use of haze makes it look as though it's occupying a significant amount of space, which a giant monster would be able to occupy such a large amount of space. And so, but Pacific Rim went a different route, and increased the size of the frame by, with the aspect ratio, and made it possible for the monsters to fit the entire frame, but it still uses scale by juxtaposing it well with not only the size difference of objects like buildings and cars, but also just the usage of weather like rain and the movement and the effects on the environment the movement have, um as well as just the sound design. Although, with the sound design, it sound design the sound design in GXK is very wonky at times. Sometimes it's good, but also it also sounds kind of, specifically with the roars, not the actual stomps or anything like that, just the roars. Specifically with Scar King, there's this noticeable warble in his roar, which I don't know why that's there. His biology would not let him warble like that. Um, but beyond that, like, the combination of the sound design plus the visuals for Pacific Rim, how they were used, it created the sense of scale and it perfected it without requiring a 16:9 aspect ratio. Um, by using what Gareth Edwards would have used in his movies. Well, I don't know if it's a restriction per se to have the aspect ratio be the way that it is, because it almost looks like it was shot for IMAX. But
Well, it was shot for IMAX.
oh, okay. So
GXK.
no, not GXK, Pacific Rim.
Oh, I don't know
Yeah,
about that one.
I don't know. It looks like it was, but I'll have to see. And it would also, and if it was shot for IMAX, it would also help portray the sheer size of the Jaegers and the kaiju. Um, Although I think someone like Braden could explain it better, because again, I'm not even a novice when it comes to CGI. I'm barely learning, so um, I would hear his judgment of Pacific Rim. I would hear what he would have to say. That and Jaden as well. Um, but yeah, no, that kind of cinematography seems to be ubiquitous regardless of tone. So like your Gamera, the Heisei trilogy, they use similar techniques, although they were limited by the technology of their time, but they use similar techniques. Um, so it can't be tone, and if it's not tone, then it also can't be preference.
Mm. The reason I say it's preference is because essentially what it boils down to is that you have two different styles, and you're just saying, like, you would have to make a case that one style is bad, like, objectively.
Yeah, like I just did right
Um,
now.
hmm.
Like, do you like the whole idea was we want to portray these monsters the way we saw it in the Showa era, as just monsters, as just guys in rubber suits. But the reason it looked like guys in rubber suits is because not only did the cinematography not make them look like giant monsters due to technical limitations, but also because even with the technical limitations they had, they chose not to innovate. So it looks like rubber suits. The movies in the show era look like guys in rubber suits fighting because of those limitations. It has nothing to do with intentionality. Do you think that, because if Japan wanted to make it look like rubber suits again, they could have, but they chose not to with Shin Godzilla, with the anime trilogy, with Godzilla minus one, even with that Godzilla versus Jet Jaguar short that they did. They still tried to have the cinematography be somewhat um scale sensitive to scale. They tried to make it, work in tandem with scale. They try to make Godzilla move as though he's big. Um, I think it would be pretty easy, but it seems as if they keep struggling. I don't know how they keep struggling. I tried moving as a giant monster would. I don't know if it's a limitation of the suit. Um, I'm not entirely sure why those limitations even exist. If it is from the suit, I mean, I'm pretty sure that Even cosplayers could probably create a suit that does not have the locomotion limitations that the suits of Toho would have in the past. I'm pretty sure they would allow for better muscle articulation, that kind of stuff. But it seems that even Toho is moving away from that. So clearly, that must have been a limitation that they had. So it wasn't. Adam Wingard is treating it like a stylistic choice when it was never meant to be a stylistic choice. It was supposed to be a technical limitation.
Hmm. I would have to disagree in some regards because I think across the board, and specifically Tokusatsu, there are definitely two styles of doing kaiju cinematography. Like, there's a few shows that, honestly, I would just describe it as GXK, but with suits and such. And one thing I would
With
say is I've always seen the Jet Jaguar short as that. Like, I would say that is shot in a lot of ways similar to the cinematography you see in GXK, and I
they
think it's
use a
done well.
blend. They use a blend of shots you would see in GXK as well as shots you would see in better monster movies. But again, honestly, with that short, I don't know what was going on there, so I couldn't really tell you what it is. But with other stuff, with other stuff like Ultraman Blazar, for example, I haven't seen it. I couldn't tell you what it is, but I do know that they use suitmation. I think it's a similar philosophy. Um, for it's a similar philosophy uh, of cinematography as something like not GXK, but well, actually, yeah, GXK in the sense that they're trying to make it look like rubber suits, but here they're actually using rubber suits. Um, I don't know why they chose that. I don't know. Well, actually, no, I can't say that it was the same spirit as GXK. That would be disingenuous. Um, I don't know why they chose to use suitmation over CGI. I don't know how they use the cinematography, so I couldn't tell you their intentions. I'd have to watch the show. Um, but it could be either a budgetary limitations because they wanted to make a show, but they didn't want to spend too much money on it, so they decided to go with the cheapest option, which was suitmation, and the less time-consuming one. Although I don't know. Actually, I don't know if time CGI would be more time-consuming, but then again, it is a live-action TV show, so it probably is a lot more time-consuming than just building sets, small sets, and then just shooting scenes there. But I mean, if the show air managed to make movies in the span of a year, then
Hmm.
I guess it would lend credence to the fact that suitmation would probably take a lot less time. I don't know if it was for budgetary reasons or if it was just a stylistic choice. I would have to look at the behind the scenes of shows like Ultraman Blazar. But if it is due to budgetary constraints and just for, you know, time, then at that point that would still count as a limitation, not a choice. And if other shows do that as well for the same budgetary reasons, because I mean, really think about it. You're producing the most amount of content for the least amount of money and the least amount of time. Like if at that point, if you're working on big projects, but you want to keep making smaller projects for the audience to nibble on while they wait for the bigger projects, surely, surely you would want to go for the cheaper option, which is suitmation, right? Which at that point would no longer be a stylistic choice. It would be a strategically a strategic compromise of quality. Like you're sacrificing the ability to make it look how it normally would for money and time. Although,
Hmm.
however, again, I don't know if that's the case. I would have to ask around. I would have to make my own investigations. So I would have to do that. But
Well,
so I can't say for sure.
here's what I'll say. There are some points in that what you've just said that I personally disagree with, and somewhat would want to clarify because when it comes to the shorts, the anniversary shorts, um, for from everything I know, they were always intended to be suitmations. Um, due in part because it is a style that people do enjoy. Like, all the tokusatsu shows aren't done because they couldn't do in CGI. Like I would say there's a large part of it that is done because people do enjoy that style because it's become a style from a limitation. Because we all
What
know that
about
like
Gamma Rebirth though, or
Gamma Rebirth.
Ultraman Rising? Because they could have done it as summation, but they chose not to. Shin Godzilla.
Yeah, but then and therein lies the thing. It's a choice. You can choose to do in summation, or you can choose to do animation or a CGI blend of live action.
Yeah, but like
Um,
a choice influenced by what? Budgetary constraints and time constraints? Or, and at that point you would have to look at the behind the scenes, you would have to look at interviews, you would have to look at, you would need to be able to do that in order to determine that for certain. Which, I mean, we don't have to do it here. We can just put a pin on that for later.
yeah, sure. Another discussion for another day, perhaps. But this is coming from me, who I've watched behind the scenes stuff. I've watched interviews, read them, and then I've also watched the shows, and like, well, yes, there is always going to be the aspect of, okay, what's in the budget, what's the amount of time we have, and certainly that can definitely influence choice. But that is not to say that another big aspect of those choices is due to simply personal tastes and what the audience wants, which there is a large vocal audience. I've seen both online and from what the people have said on these interviews and such, that there is a demand for it, as well as it is a style you can do really well in any a style within styles is too. Because I've seen shows. Something I've mentioned before on other streams or videos is the show Ultra Galaxy Monster Battle. It's one of my favorite shows, due in part because all of the action in that show reminds me of what I've seen in GVK and GXK. And that's why I love those styles in that show, and why I would argue that for that style, it's all done very well.
Again, I can't confirm nor deny anything. So pin on that.
Hmm.
But that also just lands to into a point that I have, that CGI is just better than suitmation, precisely because you can make it real. You can make it look a lot realer than in suitmation. Like when it comes to giant monsters, like if you're trying to make them look real, which most movies really try to make them look real, then CGI would be the better option. Um, but that's a different discussion for another day. I'm not
Hmm.
going to bring into that because this is exclusively GXK. With
Hmm.
GXK is part of a universe. It's part of a franchise that Adam Wingard did not start, so he would naturally be responsible for building up on what it is that they was introduced previously, which is something that was not done. Stylistically and narratively, it was not done at all. So that's where it fails. Like as a sequel, like if you saw this movie in a vacuum, you wouldn't know that it was a sequel. If you
Yeah.
had
Sure.
no idea about Godzilla, and GVK was the first movie you saw, or GXK was the first movie you saw, you wouldn't know that this is supposed to be a sequel.
Hmm.
which
Yeah.
is which lands credence to the idea that it's not tonally consistent, and that's a problem because as a franchise you would need to be. Now, uh, if you are exploring specific characters and those specific characters have a particular tone to them, if you're adapting them, like for example how James Gunn wants to do with DC Universe, there could be some leeway there, but the difference between that, something like James Gunn's DCU, and something like I don't know, the MonsterVerse, is that the tones of GVK of Godzilla movies and of a Godzilla movie and a Kong movie are already established. They are already established. So naturally you would expect, and because they're similar enough, you would expect those tones to blend in to create a a coherent, not sequel, a coherent the next logical step for the tone to go in would be serious, but with moments of levity peppered through it. as well as the cinematography reflecting that as well. Um, the tone, the visuals, you would expect that naturally. But they just styled it like a Marvel movie, basically, a modern Marvel movie that calls itself a comedy. Um, so, which kind of lends credence to the criticism some people have that GVK and GXK are like Marvel movies, which, I mean, at this point, it's the biggest possible insult you can give a movie that is like a Marvel movie. So it makes no sense that the MonsterVerse would evolve into that because the narrative does not justify that kind of tonal shift. And on top of the fact that Kong does not exist in his own unique world. Um, Kong lives in Godzilla's world, so it's a different, because imagine like you got a Superman movie and you got a specific tone, and then you got the Batman with a completely different tone, even though they're in the same universe, in the same. I mean, I'm assuming. Let's just say, for the sake of the argument, that they are in the same universe. You got the tone of the new Superman movie and the tone of the new Batman movie, diametrically opposed tones that exist in the same universe because they are in different worlds. But Kong is not characterized as someone that lives in his own world. He's characterized as someone that lives in Godzilla's world, which is why the tonal shift doesn't work.
Mm. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Yeah.
So, is there anything else?
Let me check my notes. Da, 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 da. Let's see. Hmm.
Chat's been pretty quiet.
Well, yeah. Sorry about that. It's just, let's see. Um, I'm not really sure if there's anything I want to bring to the table in terms of like any counterpoints jumping off of either your video or anything else. I would only like want to ask like if there's anything you feel that I haven't either addressed or anything you would want me to address in terms of something that you just want my perspective on and such.
Honestly, I think I've presented every single argument against this movie. I feel like it's already been made. So I don't know. Like, if you have any other specific counter arguments, or um, like, I don't. I'd be willing to hear it. But honestly, like, we've already conceded that the movie was pretty bad, and I thought that was just enough of an indictment to like not continue. But I don't know if there's anything more.
Hmm. Yeah, like, and then I think like at the end of this, like I can concede that the film and many aspects of it are not the most well made, you know, and that like at the end of the day, you can only call this film bad.
Yeah,
Um,
like, honestly, like, I don't think it's worth being this nice to the movie. It's not worth it. Like,
you
I
know,
think
I can
both
definitely
you
see.
and Sea Monster, you two in particular, I think you two are like way too nice to the movie. Way nicer than it deserves.
Mm, well, let's see. Here's the thing. I can definitely understand why, from your perspective, and with the reasons you've given, I can understand why you can see it that way. And then, like, this isn't like an appeal to emotion because I'm not arguing for it at this point. And I don't want it to come off as like me just using um, that. But like for me, with because you know something that I think you've said is that like I'm like intellectually honest. That you've said.
Oh yeah, no, I
Um,
do believe you're intellectually honest about these kinds of things, because you'll go out of your way to say what it is, but that
yeah, and like
but
yeah,
I still do think that your arguments need a lot more work, like a lot more work.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that because because again, I can say it's like my lowering of the standards. Sorry about that. Um, but I don't lower my standards for anything. I would say that I think that's how I go about it. Um, I would only describe it as like my standards are
Generally,
maybe they're just low.
yeah,
You know.
just generally. I don't know. This might sound kind of mean, but I think you use that as a crutch quite a bit. I think you use it as a crutch quite often. Um, because it almost feels like because my standards are low, I can get to say that because of how I feel about the movie, I can get to like it, or like I can get to say that it's good because my standards are
Hmm.
low. Because in my in my framework, my framework would allow this movie to remain as good. Therefore, I use my low standards as a way of saying I can say that the film is good. That's why it feels like a crutch.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I could definitely see that. And I would say that I try my best not to, even if I can fail at that. Um, and like if someone points it out to me, like I can like say, yeah, yeah, I can see that. Um, and I apologize if ever like gets to those points where you say, oh, we go in circles and such. Like I try my best not to. I'll be honest in saying there are some things that I can't grasp certain ideas. Um, because I think it's just me not understanding uh like your how do I say it, like your techniques of going about things. um and I think that's just because of your experience. Like I would say you're definitely more experienced in it be debating, having your points, arguing them. Like from my point of view, I think you're definitely more experienced than me. um
I mean, this is technically
because
my third debate, so
uh
yeah.
yeah, I also think you're very vocal, and I think that's a good point, or a good aspect about you. Um, and I did say that I think your that response video I thought was really good. I mentioned because I think you're able to concisely point out what your um, points are, which is why I felt more inspired to do my response video, even if it has its flaws there. But I just felt more comfortable tackling that one because I was able to better understand, or seemingly understand, what your points are, and I thought I could better tackle them like one by one. Because as you said, at this point you have like dozens of streams, and for me that's a little hard to like go through all of them and like pick out what point that I want to tackle. And then just going back to what I was saying, after this, I still have my love for GXK, purely on a subjective level. Um, and as I said in the beginning, this film, a lot of it, I love it for what it is, because you know, I love fast-paced action movies. I love Godzilla movies. I love Kong movies. Um, and that's like a baseline of what like my standard is. Like if it has something I like in it, which is Godzilla, I'll like that aspect. But it also has um, a lot of things that just adhere to my taste in film. I like ensemble casts with like simply defined characters, a story that's yeah, as simple as it is, but it's still very fun to go on. Um, and that's just my takeaway. But objectively, it's a film that could have and in some ways should have done better in portraying all of that to elevate it to um, a film that I think would be objectively considered good because it has its strong points, if it went for that.
Fair enough.
um,
Fair enough.
yeah,
And
because one
I don't
thing.
think I would
Mhm.
have hated this movie as much if people didn't keep saying it was good because it's not. So That I think that's just my main sort of hate source of hatred. Just seeing a bunch of people claiming untruths, just blatant, just people being blatantly wrong about something that should be obvious. Just that usually just pisses me off. The cognitive dissonance and it wasn't just people just being wrong, but just being arrogantly wrong. I think that also pissed me off quite a bit. So yeah, that's um, that I think that's most of the source of my hatred. Um, I don't think I would have hated this movie as much if people just collectively shat on it. So
Yeah, and like I think that boils down to the fact that if you have a film that has a lot of mass appeal, and then there's a lot of things that people can subjectively take away from it, when you have like a very vocal um, part of the fandom, such as yourself and like the few others that have said what they've said, like I think that just creates like a lot of like conflict, um, because like there's a reason people were attached to this film, um, and then like I hate the people who like either downplay on the fact that they have stuff they like about it but can't defend it. I hate that people are up in arms about the people who criticize it, because I think it just makes for bad discussions. Because like I love the fact that we're talking about GXK to this day. Like I love that we've had two videos talking about it because I enjoy talking about it either way. And it's the same relationship I have with Zim and Godzilla 98. Like all our discussions on Godzilla 98 are some of my favorite times I've had with within like the fandom, within like my own personal life. And I would say these two videos are also part of that. Because like even if I leave today saying GXK is a bad film, I don't regret coming on here and talking to you about it because I consider you my friend and I love talking to about movies with my friends. So I can still leave here saying I love GXK even if it's a bad film. I'll say that I still want to do my best to fix my arguments, fix my points, see if I can argue for it objectively. But at this point, I can only agree that yeah, it's a pretty bad film, based on what you've said and what I agree to. Um, but I still love the discussion we're having.
yeah, no, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. But yeah, if there's nothing left to say, then I'm pretty sure. I think we can just call it here. Yeah, I think the last, uh, I guess the last defenses of GXK are finally done. I can finally end this talking about because I get it. I know talking about movies you love. I really do not want to keep talking about this. I'm tired. I'm very tired. I want to talk about other things. Like my Zack Snyder video. It should have been out before the new Superman movie came out. Unfortunately, it might not come out before the movie, and I intend to watch the movie tomorrow. So
Mm.
I I honestly like yeah, I'm kind of pissed that I'm kind of pissed at this movie for that a little bit, kind of, sort of, because
The
it's
new
just been
Superman.
taken. No, not the new Superman movie. I hate that
Oh,
GXK has taken so much of my time and my
oh,
life because it's such a bad movie and I hate it. So I don't I hate talking about this movie because it pisses me off so. I mean, I like it. I like it. I like talking about the movie in the sense that I like dunking on it, and it is a bit exhilarating to like you know see uh bad counter arguments fall apart. There is something exhilarating about it, but at some point it just gets tiresome, and you just want to move on. So yeah, I'm kind of happy that I can finally move on about because I don't want to keep talking about this movie anymore. My whole thing was hating GVK, and yet I've been talking more about GXK instead. So that alone should be enough to be like, yeah, no, you gotta stop talking about this movie. Um, so yeah,
Mm,
that's
yeah,
pretty much
I
all I have
get
to say.
that. Alrighty. And one last thing. What do you think of the Radiant Black drawing I have up on the background here?
Oh, it's pretty good. It's really good. I don't know why I have breasts though, but other than that, it looks pretty
Oh,
good.
I don't know. Let's
I know
see.
what you were trying to do, but it looks like boobs.
I was trying to give massive pecs because you're so strong.
My boobs are not that big, okay? Ladies,
All
I know
right.
I know you want to see them, but they're not that big. Don't be impressed. There's a lot of stuff about me that's not pretty big. The only thing that's big about me is the fact that I'm 6 foot, and even then,
All right, man. Well, I guess that calls it for the debate. Let's see, we're ending off at like 2 hours 40 minutes. So then, I'll give you the time to shout out or shill anything you got going on, and then we'll call it a day there.
yeah. So just same as usual. Watch my stuff, my channel. It exists. You should subscribe. Um, Rumble. I haven't been uploading there. Patreon, haven't been uploading there either. Should have done it. Said I would, didn't do it. I lied. I'm sorry. Um, just what else? Buy me a coffee, please and thank you. Pay. I already said Patreon. Discord. It's a thing. Although it's not for the faint of heart, so I wouldn't recommend it. But yeah. Other than that, look out for the Zack Snyder video that I have. Look out for the Invincible video that is still in production. I haven't finished writing the script yet. Um, uh, Godzilla versus Kong video. I don't know when that's coming out. I don't know when I'm gonna be able to finish it. Um, but yeah. Watch out for all of that. Subscribe, and that's it. Yeah.
Alrighty. So thank you all to all the kaiju seekers and other people who came on to watch the stream. Hopefully you guys had a good time. Big thank you to Black Rooney again for letting me host the debate here and for coming on. So I guess for the foreseeable future, that'll be a bit of a wrap on any of like the GXK stuff from our ends. But you guys know I still love the movie. Um, but just to end it off, thank you all again. You can check out my Ko-fi page too. I do have commissions open on there, so if you want to get any personalized drawings of any of your favorite characters, OCs, or kaiju, just go through there. You can see what I got open on my Ko-fi page. Follow me on Twitter at Vic Monstrous to follow any of my art that I post there. So thank you all again. Over and out.